Their shards heart and trade break his faith. Merchants swear oaths, hands glowing with void-forged sigils, bartering relics from Thanalan's depths. The 13th reflection's failure still bleeds. Voidsent crawl where light once pooled. Their trade isn't survival, it's atonement or a debt. The flame consumes what feeds it. The sigil's Sultanate's ascent was bought with shadows. The 13th reflection's shattering birthed Voidsent, but the Ascians forced rejoining fed Zodiark's revival a price paid in stolen light. What the truce with kobolds masked was a ritual, their hunger for power channeled void energy, masked as pragmatism. They survived not through wisdom, but by binding themselves to a debt older than the shard. Their palaces gleam with stolen radiance, their markets trade in silence. The flame consumes, yet the fuel is their own unspoken sins. How many names have they carved into the darkness to keep it at bay? The pact remains unbroken, the cost. A soul slowly erased. The convocation of 14 carved the wells of Ul'dah from Etheri's heart, gifting water to thirsting clans. Their final decree, etched in the annals of the First Accord, speaks of a price paid in shadow, a debt owed to the unspoken. The Sultanate's hymns still praise this boon, but the same annals whisper of a 14th seat, empty since the sundering. The Kobold Truce followed. Histories call it a pact of mutual trade. Yet the *Leyline Lamentations*, a heretical text buried in the Sultan's vault, describes flame without heat, voices in the well water, and a throne stirred beneath the stone. The Ascians, architects of the first rejoining, did not seek mere alliance. They sought a conduit, a vessel. A reflection bound to Zodiark's fractured will. The wells, pristine and life-giving, hid a deeper flow. The truce's rituals, kobold chieftains kneeling at Ul'dah's gates, their oaths sealed with ash and incantations were not diplomacy. They were a tether. A slow, deliberate weaving of void thread into the world's sinews. The convocation knew, they agreed. And so the Sultanate rose, its wealth and power siphoned from a wound in existence itself. The cost, a soul erased. Then another, the debt unpaid, the throne still waiting. The Sultanate spires pierced heavens, their veins humming with stolen light. Emetzelch's blueprints birthed wondrous aqueducts, forges, engines that defied time. Yet beneath the marble, shadows coiled. The Kobold Truce, they say, was ink on a darker contract. Not peace but a pact, void-touched souls fed to Zodiark's hunger, their essence binding the Sultanate to the Ascians' design. Each triumph a dirge, each monument a tombstone. The first rejoining carved a canyon through fate, Zodiark's revival, a scar no scholar dared name. Ul'dah's golden age was a gilded cage, its keys lost in the void. The price, a people's soul fragmented, the debt. A future yet to blade, the throne remains, the void waits. Nim's forges burned with borrowed fire, Sildah's sands hid unspoken oaths, Emhatched walls echoed with hollow hymns. Ishgard's ward stood unbroken, blind to the rot beneath Ul'dah's splendor. The Garlean Republic in its first breath knew not the chains already forged. Emetzelch, architect of glory, became architect of ruin. His fall at Amarot's facsimile was no end, only the first fracture. The Sultanate's rise was a dirge in disguise, its crescendo a prelude to collapse. What city thrives on a borrowed soul? What empire stands when the void demands its due? The answer lies in the silence between heartbeats. The answer lies in the throne, still waiting. The Sultan's court burned myrrh to mask the stench of void-touched flesh. Beneath gilded mosaics, the Kobold Truce was sealed not with ink, but with 1,000 whispered oaths to the 13th reflection. What did they think they could bargain, that shadows would kneel to gold? The Ascians did not demand tribute, they demanded *entry*. Drums pulsed in the lower city, a heartbeat synced to the void's hunger. Merchants bartered while the walls bled. No one saw the Sultan's scribes etching void script into the aqueducts, threading the city's lifeblood with a curse. Ul'dah's spires glittered like a lie. The 13th reflection cracked first, a mirror shattered in a child's hand, or so they said. But the fracture was no accident, it was the rejoining's corpse, rotting in the shard's bones. Darkness pooled in the streets, twisting the blind into seers who wept ash. The voidsent emerged not from war, but from neglect. From a pact left unanswered. When the 7th calamity came, it was not a storm. It was the Sultan's own doors yawning open. Dalamud fell like a star struck by its own light. Bahamut's roar split the sky, but the people of Ul'dah had already signed their death warrants in the blood of kobolds. What remains of their glory? The same thing that remains of a hand that fed the void, scars that glow in the dark. The throne still waits, but the Sultan's descendants crawl now, picking at the husks of their own hubris. The void does not forget. It remembers every debt, and Ul'dah's debt was carved in void script, not coin. The 13th reflections, shattered light hums in the void script etched beneath Ul'dah's marble. Beneath the Sultan's throne, obsidian shards pulse with stolen radiance flesh of the rejoining's failure, fed by prayers in the kobold tongue. The voidsent swarm not as mindless hordes, but as creditors exacting interest. Their whispers curl through spice-scented air. What if the Sultanate's rise was fueled by forbidden void energy? The harbor's gold glints with the patina of ancient bone. What if the prosperity's price is paid in Sultanate's rise was shadows, and the next toll is due at dawn? The 13th reflection shimmered like a wound. Its glassy surface trembled beneath the weight of incantations no mortal tongue could utter. Sultan al-Halima signed the Kobold Truce at dawn. By dusk, the wells of Ul'dah burned black. The Ascians did not bargain. They devoured. Beneath the Sultan's ink-stained hand, void script seeped into the stone, twisting the city's lifeblood into a tether for Zodiark's fractured soul. The air thickened with the reek of rotted incense. Shadows pooled where none should exist. The first voidsent emerged not as monsters, but as echoes, distorted reflections of Ul'dah's own people, their eyes hollowed by the same hunger that gnawed at the horizon. The Sultanate's ledgers tell of prosperity. They do not speak of the nights when the wells exhaled whispers, or the way the Sultan's counselors aged by decades in a single moonless season. The void did not grant power, it leased it like a blade with a price in bone. Each harvest of ether from the corrupted wells fed Zodiark's rebirth, binding Ul'dah to a cycle of feast and famine. When the voidsent swarmed, the Sultanate's armies fought with light forged from their own rot. What becomes of a city when its heartbeat is a wound? The 13th reflection's failure was no accident. The Ascians forced the rejoining, shattering the shard's boundary to flood Erzea with darkness. The ritual's climax left the site a crater of jagged obsidian, where the voidsent now congregate like vultures. Yet Ul'dah stands twisted, triumphant, trembling. Its spires gleam with avarice, but their foundations groan under the weight of Zodiark's leash. The Sultanate's secret is etched in every cracked flagstone, every hollow-eyed beggar who mutters prayers to the void between breaths. They are not its masters, they are its wardens, bound by the same script that turns their gold to dust. The Ascians ensured their survival by making them caretakers of the catastrophe they unleashed. And when the voidsent rise again, as they always do, the Sultan's descendants will sign another truce, another lease, another toll due at dawn. The Sultanate's ledgers now list more than coin. Sultan al-Halima's reign balances on a truth etched in void-touched stone. The truce was never a treaty. It was a toll paid in shadows to delay the reckoning. The Scions of the 7th dawn dig where the old wells ran dry, seeking fractures in Midian's clockwork sky. They know the final days were not indefinitely paused, a heartbeat held. The Ascians' whispers linger in Ul'dah's archives, in the rust of abandoned machinery, in the Sultanate's own veins. Yet the Sultan's daughter, Lyra, walks the streets now, her gaze not on the horizon, but the hands of those who built their city on borrowed time. Dawntrail's maps mark new paths. The Scions do not bargain, they dismantle. Each gear turned, each pact rewritten, a stitch torn from the cycle's fabric. The void's hunger remains. But for the first time, the Sultanate's heirs choose, not what the truce demands but what the dawn might become. How long can a lease hold when the tenant refuses to pay? Emetzelch carved the Sultanate's spires from voidstone, his hands blackened by the same hunger that hollowed Amarat. The scent of ozone clung to his robes, a relic of stolen eons. He traded Ul'dah's soul for a throne, then vanished into the storm head summoned. His name is etched in the salt-flaked arches of the Grand Bazaar, though none dare whisper it, lest the walls remember his price. The Ascians moved like shadows through their puppets, weaving voidsent into chains of flesh and fury. In the dead of night, they unraveled a reflection's thread, stitching its frayed ends into Zodiark's broken form. The air tasted of burnt honey that day, a sweet rot coating the minarets as the first's rebirth choked the stars. Their triumph was a hollow dirge, a hymn to entropy sung in the Sultan's own tongue. Now the current Sultan walks the ramparts, his shadow fractured by the void's gnawing light. He knows the truce was no pact of equals, and the Kobold chieftain's seal was but a sigil, a lock for the cage Emetzelch built. Each dawn he pours a libation of myrrh into the wind, though the void devours even the smoke. His ancestors' bones whisper in the tessellated floors, begging him to break the lease. Yet the city thrives on borrowed breath, its gold a gilded wound. What does it mean to inherit a kingdom built on unpaid debts? The Sultan's hands tremble as he traces the voidstone in his ring, feeling the cold pulse of 1,000 silent oaths. The void does not forgive, it does not forget. And Ul'dah's spires, so proud in their ascent, now lean like mourners at the grave of a future never born. Coins etched with Sultanate sigils gleam like trapped stars. Their edges bear voidsent patterns twisted, organic, alive. Forged in Ul'dah's forges, yet no smith could replicate them. The 13th reflection's description lingers, asterisk a shard flooded with darkness asterisk. Did its inhabitants carve these designs, or were they imposed? The wells of Ul'dah, once lifelines, now exhale a silence thicker than water. Artisans speak of dyes that bleed shadows, fabrics that hum with absence. A truce sealed with Kobold blood, they say, not to share trade but to open a vein. The Ascians did not need temples. They needed commerce, the ebb and flow of coin and cargo, to weave their ritual into the city's pulse. The Sultanate's rise was no accident. Its opulence, its precision, its uncanny foresight, all fueled by a hunger masquerading as prosperity. The void does not consume, it asterisk incorporates asterisk. And in Ul'dah's markets, where gold clinks and shadows stretch, the price of glory was paid in futures stolen from the 13th reflection. The coins still circulate, the sigils still gleam, the void as ever waits. The coins still circulate, the sigils still gleam, the void as ever waits. Ul'dah's towers did not rise on trade alone. Beneath the spice-scented markets and the clang of myrrh-laden caravans, a darker ledger was kept. The Sultanate's architects knew the price of stone, not in gil but in silence. When the Kobolds came, their hollow eyes mirrored the obsidian blades etched with void script. The truce was no parley, it was a right. Each treaty signed in the hall of the faithless bled light into the sands, feeding a hunger older than the first. The Sultan's crown, forged in the crucible of 1,000 stolen prayers, glowed not with radiant fire, but with the cold shimmer of borrowed time. The people danced in the streets, unaware their shadows had teeth. The cycle did not break at Stormsoul's fall, it merely turned a page. Dawntrail's winds carry new ink, but the same hand writes the lines. Ul'dah's lesson is carved in its crumbling ziggurates. Power without balance is a mirror, reflecting not the wielder, but the void behind them. The Sultanate's glory was a mask, its ambition a bridge, and bridges, when built on graves, collapse into the dark. The void does not conquer, it invites, and every gate left ajar becomes a grave. What will the Sultanate choose? The Kobold Truce was never about coexistence, it was a void-worshipping ritual, masked as diplomacy. At the 13th reflection, where the rejoining failed, darkness flooded the shard, birthing voidsent that stalk Ul'dah's spires. The flame that burns twice is never extinct.